Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, June 15th, and today is day 253 since October 7th. Almost 8.5 months have gone by since the Hamas attacks on October 7th. Palestinians in Gaza, it was reported today that the heat of the summer months is starting to become excruciating in Gaza. The entire population is suffering from a deprivation of food, water, electricity, almost daily bombing, not in every area, but the ongoing ground invasion, the effects of war, trauma. The death toll, according to the health ministry in Gaza, is 37,296 Palestinians killed, and at least 85,197 wounded since October 7th. It's important to be reminded that it's estimated that there are at least 10,000 additional people killed under the rubble whose bodies have not yet been recovered. The Israeli army announced that 8 Israeli soldiers were killed in the last 24 hours when an armored personnel carrier exploded in the area of the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The Israeli Defense Forces have not yet determined what caused the explosion, but that just was reported by Haaretz on this Saturday. The U.S. built Pier. Surprise, surprise. Guess what? It's not working again. The detached pier off the Gaza coast for the second time due to high seas, U.S. officials said yesterday. It's expected to be back in place and operating again by next week. Forgive my sarcasm, but it is the joke of all jokes when it comes to the delivery of international aid. In terms of the hostages, it's not known how many hostages remain alive in Gaza. In the last 48 hours, a senior Hamas official even said it's not known how many remain alive. As of June 8th, the Israeli government said they believe of the 116 hostages who they had believed were in Gaza, they thought as many as 75 could be alive. That number was as of June 8th. But in the past couple of days, reports have been indicating that no one really knows how many are still alive today. At the G7 summit, US President Joe Biden called Hamas the biggest hangup so far to the deal on Gaza truce and hostage release. The press reported that the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in the central city of Deir al-Balah, men gathered over the body of an 11-year-old, a little boy who died during the bombardment of the nearby Barej refugee camp. And plumes of smoke yesterday, Friday, were billowing over the South Lebanon village of Jannata over a deadly Israeli strike that killed 2 civilians. I'll talk a little bit more about this Israel-Lebanon escalations. The village's deputy mayor told the press that 2 women were killed, and rescuers said at least 9 people were injured in the strike, including an infant and 2 children. The question is, has a war between Israel and Hezbollah already begun? Hostilities at the border have escalated significantly in the last week or more. Hezbollah has continued rocket fire and drone attacks, sparking fires in northern Israel. The IDF, just in the last 24 hours, used fighter jets to attack Hezbollah's military infrastructure in South Lebanon. The Israeli army also confirmed that they killed an additional Hezbollah operative on a motorcycle in southern Lebanon. And according to local media reports, another person was also wounded in the attack. CBS News reported that U.S. officials fear tensions between Israel and Hezbollah could erupt into a full-scale war. And some American officials have said that they interpret the recent, further-reaching Israeli strikes as preparing the battlefield for a sweeping assault into Lebanon by the Israeli army. If the goal is for Prime Minister Netanyahu to continue war, for him to be able to stay in power, the Lebanon border is one way that he could do that. Senator Bernie Sanders said that Netanyahu's government is breaking international law in Gaza in the West Bank while pursuing illegal annexation by force, and that Netanyahu should be facing serious consequences for these violations, and he should not be speaking before Congress. I would encourage you, there's a petition that the pastor Alex Awad has been distributing, calling for Netanyahu, calling on members of U.S. Congress to disinvite Netanyahu, that he should not be coming and speaking to a joint session of Congress right now. I mean, he's been accused of being a war criminal. There's an arrest warrant out for him by the International Criminal Court, for example, and the U.S. is not only complicit, but participating in the ongoing war in Gaza by arming the Israeli military. That's my commentary. The Israeli State Prosecutor's Office said yesterday that the National Security Minister Ben-Gvir attempts to intervene in police work by continually contacting the deputy police chief, and that is a gross breach of law. And the Israeli Defense Minister, Gallant, who is another one who's been accused alongside of Netanyahu, is due to visit the Pentagon soon for talks with his U.S. counterpart. So 2 of the most notorious Israeli leaders, Gallant and Prime Minister Netanyahu, are expected to come to the U.S. soon. 93 countries signed a declaration of support for the International Criminal Court at The Hague, confirming their backing for the court as an independent and impartial judicial institution whose mandate is to ensure equal justice for all victims of genocide, war crimes, crime against humanity, and crimes of aggression. That's what the statement said. Australia, Canada, the UK, New Zealand, Japan, Germany, and France signed. And in May, the ICC chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, applied for international warrants of arrest for 3 Hamas leaders and for the 2 Israeli leaders I just mentioned, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Defense Minister Gallant, both of whom are expected to come to the US soon. Netanyahu at the end of July and Gallant at an undetermined date. Andrei Kozlov is one of 4 Israeli hostages who was rescued from central Gaza a week ago Saturday in an Israeli operation called on the public to come support the hostages and their families at a protest today in a video filmed by the Hostages and Missing Family Forums. And in the West Bank, the Palestinian Health Ministry said 5 Palestinians were wounded by the Israeli forces' fire in a refugee camp near Ramallah. 3 are in serious condition. The security forces said the IDF had already been in the area to pursue a car ramming suspect who wounded a soldier earlier in the week, and that the soldiers had fired in response to locals who threw stones. A 16-year-old was killed in the West Bank, a 16-year-old Palestinian in Beit Farik, south of Nablus, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, and 3 others were moderately wounded. And Israeli settlers attacked a Palestinian shepherd and an Israeli activist who was there helping the shepherd in the West Bank yesterday. The settlers threw stones at the shepherd's car, they smashed his windows, they threatened him and the activist, and they beat them. In the Red Sea, the United Kingdom's maritime trade operations said a crew of a merchant vessel, well, this was actually east of Yemen's Aden, had been evacuated following a Houthi attack and that the ship was on fire and sinking. The U.S. Central Command said its forces had destroyed 7 Houthi radars, 1 drone, and 2 marine drones in Yemen yesterday, Friday. These types of incidents have continued. I don't always update on what's happening with the Houthis, but these types of incidents are happening regularly. And the US and UK forces have been responding in terms of Houthi attacks and counterattacks and vice versa. In the South Hebron Hills, I've been providing updates about the situation in terms of settler attacks throughout the West Bank. Another issue, of course, has been Palestinian children living in communities like the South Hebron Hills, like El Khair, Tuba, Masafar Yatta, these different villages. We've talked also about how there's no formal education, that there are no schools operating in Gaza. Similar things are happening in rural communities in the occupied West Bank. Students in South Hebron Hills have not been able to go to school since October 7th because accompaniment programs that existed where internationals or Israelis accompanied Palestinian children have not been able to be in effect. And there's been increased danger because of military presence or settlers, and accompaniers only were able to do so the last several weeks before school ended. And I just got this update this morning and I wanted to share it. It's an update from a group working in the South Hebron Hills, and they said this: here's our update on the many efforts to enable children from Tuba and Mughayir al-Abid villages, this is South Hebron Hills, to be able to return to their schools. The Israeli army accompaniment that enabled them for years to pass by the violent settlers of Havat Mayon ceased as the war broke out, and it has not been renewed. So children have not been able to reach their school at Al Tawani. The efforts we invested in connecting these children back to the school system only came to fruition 1 month before the school year ended. Now, as the 3-month summer vacation has begun, we're trying to organize complementary study frameworks for the children of these 2 villages. And we've asked several young adults from the villages who've completed their college studies, in most cases through financial aid we've offered at the time, to serve as teachers' aides and to help students catch up on schoolwork that they've missed throughout the entire school year that just ended. Elementary school and kindergarten children will also have a variety of creative and gaming activities that are led by a 14-year-old student from Tuba and one of the daughters of the village of Mughayir al-Abid, for whom the coming year will include a matriculation exam, needs special complementary study aids, which she can only reach at the aid center in the district town of Yatta. This is just the reality for 2 villages. Children have not gone to school for a year in the West Bank. On May 29th, this is in the United States, one of our partner organizations, the Foundation for Middle East, posted a new episode that I wanted to make sure you know about on their podcast, Occupied Thoughts podcast. The episode's entitled Centering Gaza, Punished in College: What It's Like to Be a Campus Activist Against This War, talking about the United States. I'd encourage you to listen to that episode from the Foundation for Middle East Peace. And finally, God bless all of the people in Palestine, in Israel, in the United States, around the world who are rising up in this moment, who are becoming their best selves. This gives me so much hope. You know, Israelis who are accompanying shepherds, right? This Israeli who was beaten by his country people, right? Men and women, you know, who are walking with school children, who are, you know, internationals staying at Tent of Nations, Palestinians who are leaving their families to travel around the world so the stories of people in Gaza will be heard. Just pray for them, the collective work that is being done together together, Gaza ceasefire pilgrimages. I want you to know every prayer, every sermon, every hymn, every vigil, every protest, these are all steps towards justice. These are all steps towards collective liberation. These are all steps to end genocide, to end violence, to end death and destruction, to end anti-Semitism, to end the dehumanization of Palestinians, steps towards our collective liberation and demand that Gaza has the right to live with water, electricity, food, and adequate health care. So do not give up hope, my friends. We will continue in this work together by the grace of God. Amen.